to Biohacking with Brittany. I am so excited that you are listening for another episode today. We are diving into all things burnout, mental health, physical health, nutrition with my special guest, Raywin Guerrero, also known as the Gutsy Executive Coach, which I love that name. We are going to hear all about her journey and her recommendations for helping us slow down, how she sees burnout affecting high-performing women like myself, who is recently just gone through burnout. So this is a very applicable episode. So anyway, Raywin, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. And thanks for sharing about your own burnout. That you're obviously looking to use your experience to help and uplift other women so they don't end up down the same path.
Yeah, to be honest, I want to ask you about this. I was kind of, I don't want to say blind to it, but I kind of just thought that I was in a chronic stressed state.
Yeah.
I guess my question, and as I go through this myself, is how do you know when you're just stressed from some sort of life event or maybe work versus oh, you're in burnout, this is the bottom of the barrel? How do you distinguish between those two?
Yeah, such a good question. And it's one that people often ask because they want to know, well, isn't modern life just stressful? And isn't this just the state that we're running around in all the time where we're double or triple booked and we've got commitments, with work, outside of work, and we're trying to do all the things, including take care of ourselves, take care of our loved ones, take care of a business if we're running that, or, devote time and energy to a career. So I would say let's go with the top sort of 3 signs that your body is not playing ball with you any longer in the way that it's not able to handle stress. So one of the first signs is that, at one point you kind of feel like you're superwoman, right? And you can handle anything. You've got all the energy. You're kind of wired. You wake up, you kind of, spring out of bed and you're like, I can take on anything. And you go through a period like that for a little while, maybe 3 to 6 months, sometimes even a couple of years of feeling like superwoman. And then you start to feel, wait a second, it's really hard for me to get out of bed. I kind of need multiple cups of coffee. I feel like my bowels aren't doing their thing anymore. I'm not going to the bathroom the way that I used to. I'm noticing my cycle has changed. It's either becoming more painful or heavy, or sometimes it disappears even. That's also a sign. So irregularities in your hormones. The other thing is, trying to get to sleep in the evening. This is a big one. When people are trying to wind down, they end up being all wired and their brain suddenly is like, hey, listen to me. You haven't done blah, 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 blah. And you'd be like, oh crap, I've got a bunch of things on my to-do list that I didn't get done. And you're up all night ruminating on all the stuff that you got to do. So those are 3 of, I would say, the telltale signs. You switch from being superwoman, you can take on the world, to then needing you need maybe a couple hours to get ready in the morning because it's so hard, or you need a lot of caffeine to get through the day. You're having that afternoon slump because your energy production is probably one of the first signs that things are not working the way they're supposed to. So, normal stress is different in that way. You still have energy. You're still okay. You're still sleeping okay. But with burnout, your energy starts to tank either first thing in the morning or mid-afternoon. And then sometimes you get a boost of energy in the middle of the evening when you should be finding tired but wired kind of thing. And then you also have those changes to your cycle. That's the next thing. As a woman, one of our big clues, our monthly report card, is our period. And if that starts changing and not in a favorable way, that's when oh wait, I probably need to pay attention to things, because one of the first signs that our body's not doing well, the period will tell you, because if you don't have the right balance of B vitamins, if you don't have the right neurotransmitters, the right amount of hormones, and hormones are all made from amino acids. If you don't have, and you're not absorbing food because you're in a state of constant stress, and that has damaged your gut, and which is why, I'm called the Gutsy Executive Coach, because so much happens within the gut and how it converts into the nutrients and the hormones and the neurotransmitters that we need. We need to pay attention to how we're absorbing food, not just what we're eating, because if we're not absorbing, because we're in a permanently stressed state, then that can lead to a place where I'm not getting nutrients, and then my body's starting to become depleted, and then muscles start to become eroded, and then brain fog, and then memory loss, and then, just a cascade happens, right? And we want to stop that cascade before it becomes too much, before it becomes like a full-blown illness. So the telltale signs are energy, the sleep that you're getting or the lack of sleep that you're getting. Your period is your report card, your monthly report card. And then obviously your gut, how well you're breaking down and digesting food and how often you're eliminating and how well that's happening.
Yeah, I love that. Those are such tangible ways to be able to assess how you're doing. I just think it's really interesting. Mine was like kind of like that, a little different. And I think it would be different for everybody. I don't think it would look the same for everybody, obviously. For me, I noticed that like once a week or so, I started waking up early, like let's say at like 3 a.m. And then my mind would be like, oh, I might as well just like get up and start working. Like it's like a new day. I might as well start. And that started happening. And then like, it'd be like 2 a.m. And then I'd be like, again, like I might as well just start working right now. And then I looked back and I was like, okay, how many hours am I working a week? This is insane. So like the sleep dysregulation, it wasn't that I was struggling to fall asleep. It's that I would wake myself up earlier and just like have that cortisol rush right like so too early in the morning when you're typically supposed to get it around, 6, 7 a.m. I was getting it at 2, 3 a.m. and then couldn't go back to sleep and just got up and started working. And that is like, something is off here. This shouldn't be happening.
Exactly. And, that was the other thing that I would have gone into. And I'm glad you went there. So it's either you have trouble going to sleep or you're having this blood sugar / cortisol dysregulation. And the both are intrinsically linked. They're linked together. So if the cortisol, when you're waking up at that 2, 3 in the morning, very often we say it's either two things. It's one, a blood sugar issue, or two, which is linked to the cortisol, or two, there is some sort of underlying pathogen that is becoming active at that time. And they say around 2 o'clock in the morning is liver time, and that's when the body's supposed to be detoxing. And if you're waking up at that time, that means that something's either stirring, like something biochemically is stirring within you, as in like an unfriendly bacteria, or you've got that issue with your blood sugar dropping because you've been so stressed throughout the day, and then it's causing your cortisol to elevate. So, and then it wakes you up. So you're right. You're supposed to be waking up at around 6 a.m. with daylight, ideally. Like you really should be waking up with daylight. But if you're waking up at 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock in the morning, that is also a huge clue that something is amiss and that you need to pay attention and start to rein it in and not jump out of bed and be like, I might as well start working. Try and soothe yourself back into a place. Well, let me try and get back to sleep. Maybe take some magnesium, have a hot milky drink, have some tart cherry juice, some of the little tips and tricks that you can use to help your melatonin get back on track. Maybe even have something to help balance your blood sugar. Very often when people say that they've got blood sugar dysregulation and that it's impacting their sleep, I'm like, well, let's look at what you've been eating. Like, are you eating enough? And believe it or not, are you actually eating enough carbohydrates? Because so many people are going low carb. And maybe what you need is a tiny amount of carb and a little bit of fat before bed. And that could help you stay asleep because that would help the blood sugar issue. So, and when I say carb, I mean like a good one, not like go and have a box of cookies before bed, okay? So those are some little clues just in general. And again, everything that I'm speaking about is in general. Each person, as you've mentioned, has specific individual needs, and bioindividuality always comes into play with these things. So I would say in terms of biohacking and wanting to hack burnout, the best thing and the number one way to do that is to actually figure out what is happening with your body specifically, rather than just listening to random podcasts and reading random magazines that are talking in general terms. Look at what's happening with you specifically and doing the investigative work that requires. And I know you and I have connected via the Women's Biohacking Conference, and you heard me talk a lot about know your own data, collect your own data, whether that's wearing a CGM and figuring out what your blood sugar is doing, whether that's wearing an Oura ring and figuring out what your sleep's doing, and your heart rate variability and your respiratory rate. And the other thing that's really useful from the Oura ring is, for a woman, is your basal body temperature. So you want to be checking all these things. And if you find it overwhelming to do it on your own, then definitely look into working with someone who can help you demystify and decode all of this, so that it's not just, oh, you've got all this data and the spreadsheets and you don't know where to begin, right? And you don't know how do you navigate through all of the information.
Are you tired of your hormones causing chaos in your life? Do you find yourself struggling to regulate your menstrual cycle, uncertain what supplements to take and when, or confused about the best workouts to do to maintain hormonal balance? Well, I have great news for you. I have developed a ebb and flow cycle guide, which is your ultimate solution to all of your hormonal problems. This personalized guide has been expertly crafted to address all your hormone related issues, and it's also super easy to use. Why is it so effective? Because it's born out of personal experience and the desire to overcome irregular cycles myself. With my Ebb and Flow Cycle Guide, you'll discover a world of benefits that will transform your life. You get to say goodbye to uncertainty and confusion and say hello to a healthier, more balanced you. Inside this unbeatable guide, you'll find all the answers you need to start living in harmony with your menstrual cycle today. But that's not everything. As a special bonus, I also added in over 30 delicious, quick and easy recipes designed to help balance your hormones. With these recipes, you can take action right now and they'll help you on your journey to becoming more in sync with your menstrual cycle. There's different recipes for different phases, as well as different supplements, workouts, and biohacks for each phase of the menstrual cycle. Don't let your hormone imbalances hold you back any longer. Trust me, I've been there and I wish I had this guide to help me when I was really struggling in the weeds of my hormonal chaos that I was going through. You can grab your copy of my guide right now in the podcast description or visit my website. It's super easy. It's right at the top for you to get and download today. Enjoy this episode and I will catch you in the next one. Yeah. No, exactly. That's exactly it. It is overwhelming for sure in the beginning when you have any type of wearable or do any type of test and you get the results back or you read what it says from the night before and you're like, okay, like, what does this mean? And why was my HRV lower last night? What did I do yesterday to make it like that? And it can definitely be overwhelming. I remember I've had my Oura Ring for a long time, like since 2018, I think. And I remember I actually took, I think it was last year, I took a month off of tracking and using it because I found I was becoming so caught up in its recommendations and, oh, I slept badly, so this should be my workout today. But actually I feel kind of good and maybe I do want to like lift some weights or do something more. And I was relying on it too much. And so I had to take a step back and learn again that my intuition is actually probably a better indicator of how I'm feeling than a tracker is. Although it is useful, I think there needs to be a combined approach ideally.
I totally agree with you. And I love that you mentioned your intuition and that you listened to your body, because that's something that, you know, we're always looking for external sources to tell us how to take care of ourselves, right? Whether that's a doctor or a wearable or the latest tech, or, you know, again, the Mayo Clinic or something, like they're trying to tell us how to behave, or even the government, but I'm not going to go there. But tell us how to look after ourselves. But the best person to take care of yourself is you. You should be your best doctor. And my entire approach is to become the CEO of your health. And that is exactly what you're talking about. Listen to what your body's saying. If you eat certain foods and they make you tired or they make you foggy or they give you a headache and you notice, I don't feel that good, or I feel bloated, feel crampy, these are clues your body's talking to you, and it's talking to you all the time. Like that's the best feedback that you're going to get. And, you know, very recently, I did a food sensitivity test about a week ago and I got the results on Friday. And there was something on there that I thought like, oh my God, like that's such a good food. I can't believe like I'm not allowed to eat it. You know, because they change over time as well, right? Food sensitivities are a thing that evolve with you and what's going on with your gut and a bunch of other things. And in my case, carrots showed up on my food sensitivity test. And I thought, man, I love carrots. But I started to think back. I said, it's kind of weird. I kind of noticed every time that I eat it, I end up having to urgently go to the bathroom. Yeah, and not like immediately. It's not like within like an hour or something, but something definitely will happen within the first 24 hours where I've got like this kind of sense of like, oh boy, you know, things are moving. So I thought initially, I was like, well, it's good fiber. You know, I'm doing okay. I was like, nope, maybe it's my carrots that are creating the problem. So certain things like that, you know, just paying attention to like, is this food creating a sense of panic sometimes? Because that can happen too. Like certain foods can actually elevate your heart rate, make you breathe shorter and sharper, and you can feel like you're hyperventilating. I noticed that in the past when I would have dairy, that would happen. I would end up having like my heart's like racing, and I'm like, oh wow, like me and cheese, we don't get along. And then you do a food sensitivity test, and it confirms it. So paying attention to your body, probably the best thing you can do in becoming the CEO of your health.
I love that. It's easier said than done. And I think it's easy to ignore the signs until it gets to a point where you can no longer ignore it and you have to do something about it. And yeah, like I've just recently been at that point, even as somebody who tries to be as healthy as I can be. I think it's difficult, especially, and I'm sure you run your own business full time like I do, but I think when you're an entrepreneur, there's this stress that I haven't experienced before when I was working in other jobs that's unlike anything in terms of the pressure that you put on yourself, and the outcomes that you get are directly related to how much you work, and until you scale to a point, obviously. So it's so interesting, like navigating this time, and so many people listening are probably entrepreneurs as well. Do you have any specific recommendations for female entrepreneurs who might be experiencing burnout right now, or maybe they're on the other side of it and they're trying to just get past it? Like, where can we even really start if that's what your reality looks like day to day?
Wow. I love that we're talking about this for female entrepreneurs, because very often they're wearing multiple hats, right? So you are familiar with that. So within your business, you're wearing several hats. And then outside of your business, you're wearing several hats. You're a partner, you're maybe a mother, maybe you're a dog mom, you've got fur babies or whatever. And you've got other responsibilities and things that you feel like you're juggling all the plates all the time, and that there's never a minute to stop. And I feel like society has designed life to be so chaotic and so hectic to actually keep us away from what our real mission is. And I think as a female entrepreneur, the number one thing when you want to like deal with feeling overwhelmed and burnt out is like, hey, what am I doing? Like, take an audit, right? So you sit down and you work out your values, and then you work out what it is you're actually spending your time doing. So you kind of have like a line down the middle of a page, and one side is like, what do I value? And if you value things like time and space for, I don't know, riding my bike or meditating or playing with my kids or hanging out with my husband or my partner, whoever, or hanging out with my friends or playing an instrument or doing, and you realize that you're on the other side, it's like time allotted to those things. And you're like, oh my God, I'm spending less than like 5 minutes a week on any of it, right? Then you're like, okay, wake up call. Why am I doing the things that I'm doing if I'm not getting to the point where I can do the things on that left-hand side of my sheet of the paper, right? So I think doing an audit is a good place to begin without even having to go down the route of doing any lab work or any tracking. Just some self-monitoring of like, where's my energy being channeled currently? And is it actually being channeled into the things that I say make me tick, the things that excite me, the things that give me joy, right? And if it's not, then you're like, all right, I need to maybe reevaluate where I'm headed, what I'm doing, how I'm doing it. Maybe I need some help doing that too, because very often even coaches need coaches. And over the summer that happened to me, I was in a place where I'm being pulled in multiple directions. I'm like, I actually need someone to help me stay on track because I'm not doing enough of the things that light me up. And then how can I show up in the world being the best, happiest, most vibrant, purposeful person that I want to be for my work and for my clients and for the people in my life who I love? So sometimes we might need to just do that audit. And then when we realize like, hey, I might not be able to do all of this on my own, get help, get mentorship, get coaching, find people who can support you, people who have walked that path before you and have got the experience and can give you the guidance and steer you in the right direction. And of course, you make it your own. You take their advice or their guidance and you make it your own. So doing the audit, I think, is a great first step. And I call it it's like an alignment audit, right? And you basically write down your values on one side and then where you're actually spending energy on the other side. Like, what are your activities all about? So I feel like that's probably a useful thing for anyone in any business, not just entrepreneurs, even career women, people who've got their, who are climbing a corporate ladder or whatever. Like, look at where your energy is being spent, and is it actually being spent on the things that make you tick, on your why? And maybe at the top of the page, you can put down like what your why is. Like, write down, my why is I want to do this in the world. I'm ready to create impact in the world. I want to help people, or I want to spend more time with my family. I want to have residual income so I can just chill out at home with my, with my dogs or whatever, or go on lots of vacations. So figure out what is and then look at your what.
I love that. I think that's such a good idea. And it's so different actually when you see it on a piece of paper, like visually, because obviously right now people listening to this can think, oh, my values are family and friends and I don't know, self-care, whatever it might be. But when you actually write down, oh, where am I spending my time? And then you can compare it like that. That's pretty sobering. Like it is to see something like that. And then take that as a starting point. Like you said, okay, now what do we do with this information and how am I going to change? What does this next week look like? It doesn't have to be a radical 180, but okay, maybe I don't work on the weekend this week. And there you go. And now I spend more time with my family and just like start to kind of peel back and figure out what works for you. But yeah, it's not easy, especially once you're in the spiral of just working a lot or whatever it might be that you have gotten caught up in.
Yeah, that you're right about that. But I love that, when you take baby steps, these micro steps in the right direction, you end up getting to where you want to go without burning out. So micro habits are the way forward, in my opinion, and in my experience from what I've seen. And there's a lot of good research surrounding micro habits because, again, you were saying like sometimes we're like, oh my God, it's so overwhelming to have to change everything all at once. And you don't have to change everything all at once. When I worked with my coach and when I coach people, we don't change everything all at once. We talk about like, okay, this is the end goal. This is where we want to get you to. But we're going to work backwards basically from there. So Stephen Covey says, begin with the end in mind. That's literally what you're going to do. It's like, okay, now I know where I'm supposed to go and I have a GPS aimed at that. And then the roadmap is going to be mapped out between you and the coach or you and whoever, you and yourself. You're going to be like, okay, this week I'm going to, wake up and go outside and get sunlight for 20 minutes before I start doing anything else. Or tomorrow I'm not going to eat at my desk. I'm going to actually eat with a friend or connect with someone. And, human connection is another big part of burnout, or the lack of human connection, the amount of screen time that we end up having nowadays because of the fact that everything has pivoted to being online. The more you spend time with real life people and that you've got opportunities for human touch, oxytocin is stimulated by human touch, and oxytocin directly counteracts cortisol, which is the stress hormone. So the more opportunities you have for being in people's company, whether it's a loved one, a child, a pet, whatever, holding on to a dog, stroking it, it lowers blood pressure. So these are all tangible things that people can do. Having a partner that you love who will cuddle you in the evening or whenever, or in the morning, and you have time and you have connection time. Connection time is vital for us as human beings. It's vital. And, maybe you're single. If you're not having physical touch with another human, maybe go get massages. Those are things that can actually help stimulate the production of oxytocin, and it can help counteract the effects of cortisol.
Are you looking for a way to nourish your body while reaping the benefits of prolonged fasting without the hassle? Look no further than the Prolon 5-Day Fast. We get it. You want the health benefits of fasting, but life gets in the way. That's where Prolon steps in as the solution. This groundbreaking nutrition technology has been meticulously designed and clinically tested by 14 global universities. It provides your body with the incredible cellular, metabolic, and emotional advantages of prolonged fasting, all while enjoying real food. Here's the beauty of it. Prolon offers transformation in 5-day cycles. Just 5 days on and 25 days off, and you'll start experiencing rejuvenation, longevity, and a path to healthier living. What makes Prolon truly exceptional is that the optimal results are achieved with 3 consecutive cycles. That's where the magic happens. Prolon is even patented for its incredible effects on healthy aging, triggering cellular rejuvenation and autophagy, the body's natural process for cellular self-cleansing. But it's not just about aging gracefully. With Prolon, you can look forward to fat-focused weight loss, an improved sense of well-being, and a transformed relationship with food, which is really important. And if you're worried about your skin showing the signs of time, fear not. In just 3 cycles of Prolon, you can enjoy healthier, younger-looking skin with reduced fine lines and wrinkles. Ready to take charge and try it today? I definitely recommend you do so. You can follow the link in my show notes or on my website to try it yourself and use my discount code biohackingbrittany to get a discount at checkout. So that is the Prolon 5-day fast. I really recommend it. I've done it once and I'm going to do it a couple more times coming up in the next few months just to get the most benefits. And I hope you do as well. I love that. Yeah, I definitely feel that when I pet my dog, Moose. It's like this little, like, he lies on the couch and then I go lie beside him and I pet him and I feel so much better within seconds because it is that oxytocin release. And it's like, it's so funny because when I'm in a bad mood, because I understand how this works, I go to him and I'm like, I need my oxytocin, like, come here. Like, you are like, this is a drug and I need it from you. And so, yeah, it's really special. And I really encourage people to actually get pets if they can. There's so many health benefits associated with it, like not even just oxytocin, but I think it's just, I'm so glad that you mentioned that because I think it's so important. I'm curious about your own personal story with burnout. So I know you kind of had your first, or maybe it was your first and only, I don't know, but I know you had this like burnout a moment in your life. Was that your first and only one when that happened? And what did that look like for you?
All right, so let's answer this question in reverse. So I'm going to talk about so there's more than one, but let's work backwards because the most recent one actually was last year. I had been triple vaccinated to enter the United States. And after that, my hormones tanked completely.
Oh man.
And it took about 6 months to kind of get back on track because, I wasn't seeing as many clients that I normally would. At one point I was seeing sort of like 15 people a month and I kind of trickled it down to like, I'm going to see 2 clients. I don't really need to see to work with anybody more than that because I was also doing, it's not just the clients that you see. It's like, you got to do podcasts, you got to write blogs, you got to write.
Yeah.
Everything had to kind of go on hold apart from, because only the things that didn't require a ton of energy is what I was ending up doing. So the most recent one was post-vaccination. The first one that was diagnosed and that I actually had to physically take time out for was in 2016. And that's when I was in London. I was working in a corporate wellness job and I'd had a diagnosis of IBS. I'd had some unexplained infertility, a bunch of other things, anxiety, insomnia, migraines. Like there were a cluster of symptoms that were all clues to the fact that my body was not happy. And unfortunately, when you're going to doctors, their MO, they're great in an emergency. And I always say like doctors are great for a gunshot wound or a broken leg or a heart attack, but they are not going to help you prevent the heart attack. And obviously they have nothing to do with the gunshot wound, but they're not going to help you like prevent any of the, like the unexplained infertility. They were all stumped. They were just like, well, if you want to have a baby, you're probably going to need to like do tons of rounds of IVF. And I'm like, there's no reason why my body should be behaving this way. And of course, this was before functional medicine for me too, right? So like 2017 was when I ended up studying functional medicine. So I was kind of reliant on them for information, for guidance, for insight into what was happening with me. And they weren't able to give me very much apart from like, well, your labs all look okay, so it must be in your head. Like maybe you should go see a psychiatrist. And that was super depressing as well. So, my big moment happened in 2016 and it was a bunch of things all at once. I'd had like 5 line managers in 4 years and my grandmother died. I broke my ankle, like literally all at the same time.
Wow.
Yeah, literally all at the same time. I was very close to my grandmother. So when that happened, I just had a literal come to Jesus moment. Like, what am I, my life? Like, is this what I'm going to be living? Like living in a 2x4 apartment in central London that I'm paying through the wazoo to live in and commuting on the train every day and hustling and, working 15 hours and 90-hour weeks and sleeping for 5 hours a night and trying to keep on top of a fitness routine and a social life. It was just exhausting. And that was, it showed up in terms of my gut being very unhappy. I wasn't breaking down food, digesting properly. My hormones, as a result, being unhappy. Like I said, everything kind of starts. If you're not breaking down your food, then your hormones aren't going to play ball with you. So no wonder, because I wasn't absorbing nutrients, so that I could never make a baby because I wasn't absorbing any nutrients. And I wasn't sleeping either, which also creates an extra stress on the body. Sleeping 5 hours a night, we know anything less than sort of like 7 hours and within the right window as well. And I was going to bed at like 1 a.m, waking up at like 5, and then going for a run, thinking I was doing myself well, and then going for a 2-hour spin class in the evening or hot yoga, not realizing like I'm already tanking. I don't need to be doing these types of activities. So that was my first burnout. But the like I said, when I hit rock bottom was when I started questioning, like, what am I doing? And how can I turn this around? And, luckily functional medicine found me. And I think I saw Mark Hyman in London. I went to one of that, I was running a wellbeing program. So when you're doing a wellbeing program, you're kind of plugged into that world anyway. So he was in London doing a talk. I went to the talk and my brain was like, oh my God, this is what I need to be doing instead. This is where I'll actually make a difference in people's lives, not just the checkbox exercise. That's unfortunately a corporate wellbeing program. Although I'm sure there are many good corporate wellbeing programs out there, but at the time, the one that I was involved in, I wasn't really moving the needle on anybody's health, and I was wrecking mine. So I needed to take some authority and take back my health. And that's why I want to help people do the exact same thing, because very often either a partner or a boss or something toxic is in your life that's robbing you and stealing from you, stealing your energy and your joy and your zest for life and keeping you sick and tired. And everything that I do now is about making sure that people don't stay in that place. That yes, it will happen. It can happen, but you don't have to stay there, and you don't have to you don't have to be dependent or listen to the diagnosis that, oh, there's something wrong with you and it's in your head. Because ultimately, yes, my blood work for the doctors didn't show very much, but when I did all the functional labs and I saw that I didn't have the right balance of good bugs. In fact, I had this overgrowth of bad bugs and not enough good bugs, and that I had a porous gut. It was leaky, and I had no enzymes to break food down. My pancreas and my liver and gallbladder were not happy. So there was all this stuff that the functional labs were able to show me that the doctors couldn't see with the blood work. And very often when people come and they say, hey, I've had all these labs and everything's normal and nobody knows what's wrong with me, I'm like, well, if you have symptoms, everything's not normal. If you got symptoms, that means we got to do deeper work, and the blood work is just a snapshot, and it's not going to tell you how things are functioning per se, which is why I love what I do with functional medicine. I love being a health detective.
I love that. Yeah, I relate to so much of your story, especially with like functional medicine. I'm actually looking at studying functional medicine myself now, because it's been on my radar for a long time, and I wanted to do naturopathic medicine like years ago, and then it didn't work out. And I didn't end up doing it. And I'm a nutritionist now, but I've been looking at, okay, where do I want to take my practice and my business? And I've always been interested in functional medicine. So I think that's going to be something that I look into and start ideally maybe this year or maybe in January, depends on the institution and school and stuff. But I love what they do. And I think it's so interesting to take a root cause approach to this, which is not how you would typically approach burnout. Like, I guess the narrative that I hear, the common narrative in the spaces that are not biohacking or functional medicine is like, oh, you're burnt out. Okay, take a vacation, work less, and have a positive mantra that you say to yourself every day. And you know what I mean? And that's it. Like, it's kind of this, like, I don't want to say it's a Band-Aid approach, but it's almost like a bit superficial. Whereas like, I'm curious about like, how do you apply functional medicine to burnout in a way that is actually like, let's get to the bottom of this and let's get better results?
Oh my God, I love that we are talking about this, because that's one of my biggest bugbears. Like I said, I think I was telling you at the start that I've been on a lot of burnout podcasts, and they all are in that vein where it's like, well, you're burnt out. Maybe you need to sleep more. Maybe you need to do. Like, you don't realize that when you get to the point of burnout, so many systems in your body are starting to shut down. They're starting to fail, right? So that's why you need to, yes, for sure, we need a mindset approach, but we need to pay attention to the fact that we might be energetic beings, but we're also completely biochemical, physical beings, and the physical and biochemical require a ton of support. You can't kumbaya your way out of burnout. I tried and it didn't work. And that was one of the things I forgot to mention when we were just talking about my experience. I had trained as a hypnotherapist to help people with anxiety. And when I was going through my own stuff, I was meditating every single day, and telling myself positive affirmations, and I could get through this, and I have armor on around me, and I'm a buffer, and I'm whatever. And, building yourself up with psychological affirmations, and they're great, but I had physical things going on with me. Like I had an overgrowth of pathogenic bacteria. And the reason these things happen as well. So just because you're exposed to pathogenic bacteria doesn't mean you'll always get it. And, you and I had mentioned this at the start before we hit the record button. Two people going through the exact same experience, one gets sick and the other one doesn't. Why is that, right? Is it because of somebody's mindset, or is it because of someone's biochemical makeup, right? So yes, so mindset might buffer you temporarily, but if you are being exposed to, let's say, so why would two people who are experiencing a similar situation both have a different experience of that situation, right? What does that have to do with? So I want to give you a quick story. So I had a client who came in. It was actually a young 14-year-old boy who was diagnosed with Hashimoto's, which is an autoimmune thyroid condition, like a slow thyroid. And he and his mother, his mother's a woman in her 30s. He's actually she's in her 40s, and he's in his teens. And they're eating the same food. They're experiencing life in the same way. They go swimming in the same lake. They live in Colorado. But he has tremendous gut issues and she doesn't, right? He's having problems with digesting. He's got no energy, and his thyroid is not behaving the way that it's supposed to. So his hormones are out of whack. And this is a young person. He's supposed to be up and playing with his friends and have loads of energy, right? And then the mom, who's in her 40s, has got more energy than the teenager. So why would that happen? Now, when I ran his labs, he had an overgrowth of, I think he had 3 parasites, a bunch of other things going on. His minerals, he was completely depleted minerally. And that would make sense, because if he's got parasites and his minerals, he doesn't have the right levels of minerals. And that would impact the thyroid in a huge way. So he was hypothyroid with an autoimmune illness, and his mother was healthy, doing well, despite doing all of the same things, right? Like they would go swimming together and all. And I said, well, where do you think you got these parasites from? Do you guys have a well? She's like, well, we swim. Every summer we go swimming in the lake. And I'm like, all right, so both of you go swimming in the lake, but one of you's got parasites and the other one doesn't. So why would that happen, even though they've both been exposed to the exact same stressor? Well, one, his immunity and his immune system probably isn't developed well enough. And in the case of someone, let's say in a corporate environment, if you're not sleeping the right amount, if you are stressing more than other people, then you become more susceptible to stressors like pathogens and parasites and mold and heavy metals and those kinds of things, right? And that's another thing, like certain environmental toxins can actually become a stressor and damage things like your gut and make you more susceptible to certain bugs. So being mindful of the physiological, the environmental, the biochemical, and the psychological, those are all the things that play into the way a person's going to experience the world and how susceptible they are to things like the growth of gut bacteria. And again, the gut bacteria, I always harp on it because it's so important. If you think about the gut and the fact that you got up to 90% of your serotonin is actually being produced there, that's huge for people who are struggling with mood and cognition issues as well, right? Dopamine's produced there, 50% of your GABA is produced there, and those are all neurotransmitters that help regulate things like your mood, your ability to relax, and your happiness levels, and ability to concentrate as well. So if those are out of balance because your gut is being tormented by whatever you're exposing it to, and also potentially other things in your environment, people, situations, etc., that might be making you more stressed than you should be, it will deplete things like your good levels of bacteria and your neurotransmitters as well.
Let's talk about getting the remarkable benefits of fasting without the daunting commitment of long-term fasting. As a dedicated professional, always on the lookout for ways to enhance my health and well-being, I've explored intermittent fasting extensively, and if you're a listener of the podcast, you know this. However, I've often found myself pushing the boundaries and experiencing adverse effects such as sleep issues and energy slumps, and also hormonal issues. While intermittent fasting did offer some positive outcomes initially, like many of us, I struggled to incorporate it long term without it really disrupting my daily life. However, my life has recently taken a turn for the better, all thanks to Mimeo. This is the world's first biomimetic supplement. This incredible innovation is the accumulation of years of rigorous clinical research, meticulously designed to replicate the effects of a 36-hour fast at the cellular level, which is wild. With Mimeo, I can now experience the holistic benefits of fasting without enduring prolonged periods of hunger and deprivation. Are you intrigued about the benefits? Let's get into it. First and foremost, Mimeo activates your cells' innate regenerative capabilities, much like fasting itself. This translates to optimized metabolism and better control over hunger, which a lot of us really value if we're trying to watch our weight. Secondly, it significantly boosts energy levels and accelerates recovery, making it an absolute game changer for active individuals like myself. Thirdly, Mimeo elevates mood and sharpens mental clarity, enabling us to be at our absolute best every single day. I definitely notice this, especially when I take it right before work in the mornings. The icing on the cake is that Mimeo's formulation is exclusively derived from molecules naturally produced by our own body. This means it is very, very safe because it is in perfect harmony with our biological system, delivering optimal effectiveness. Still not convinced? Mimeo offers a 100% happiness guarantee. That's right, there's absolutely nothing to lose. So for all of my fantastic listeners out there, if you want to give Mimeo a try and add it to your supplement stack, I really suggest you do so. And you can do that by using my discount code BiohackingBrittany for 10% off for the first 3 months of your subscription, which is awesome. Join me along with countless others who are on the path to revolutionizing their health with Mimeo. Bid farewell to the challenges of long-term fasting and usher in a healthier, happier version of yourself, which we always love. Thank you for listening, and always remember, when it comes to optimizing your health, Mimeo holds the key. Visit their website, linked in my show notes and on my website as well, and embark on your journey towards a better you now. It sounds so complicated. Honestly, like it sounds like a lot for the average person to think about all these different things in terms of neurotransmitters and gut bacteria and food and their environments and psychology. Like, it's so complex, and the human body is so complex that it makes sense that it takes a while for burnout to actually occur, or like for that level of stress to actually occur, because I think it is so complex that you almost just wouldn't feel it right away. Like, it's like a snowball, right? Like just going down a mountain that slowly gets bigger and bigger. Like, I just find it interesting that, like you said, like you can have two people in the same situation and experience something so different, but what was their history like? And we don't know necessarily what their health looked like day to day for the past few years that led them to that point. And so it's just complex. And I can't help but think that the average person might just be overwhelmed by this. Like, and that's the point as well, I guess, is that if you are at this point of burnout and you think, oh, to get out of this, I need to do all of these things, which also just feels overwhelming. What are you supposed to do? Do you know what I mean? Like, it feels like the way out itself is overwhelming, and the way that you got there is overwhelming as well, I guess.
Yeah, well, that's why I always say, like, if you look at an elite athlete, they've got a lot to do, right? They've got a ton of things that they need to do in order to be able to perform at a high level and to be able to compete and to win and to be successful at what they're doing. And I look at people in life who were the same. Like, we need to be, and elite athletes, they have got support all around them. People taking care of their food, people taking care of their musculoskeletal needs, like making sure that they're going to yoga. You know, I was thinking of like all the famous tennis players. They have like these huge teams around them. And the average human, yes, it's a lot to take in, but that's why you don't do it alone. The whole point is, like, don't do this alone, because even though, yes, you are the best person to know what's going on with your body, when you know something's up and you could tune into it and you don't know how to figure it out, go get the help that you need and work with someone who is trained to look at your body as a symphony, as opposed to, because the problem with doctors and the current medical model is that they look at diseases. They don't look at the person. So they're treating paper and they're not necessarily looking at the person who's in front of them. And very often people will send me DMs and ask me, how do I deal with this problem? I don't know. Let's just give an example. Heavy periods. I'm like, well, who's the person who has the heavy periods? Because I can't give you an answer for that, right? I can't give you an answer that would be realistic to you, because there might be some kind of blanket answer for it, but it's not going to be the right answer for you necessarily, because you might have heard that expression, one man's meat is another man's poison. So one person might do really well on a certain type of protocol or diet, and then another person might really tank on it. So the idea behind all of this, if I could get anything over across to your listeners, is that don't do it alone. Work with somebody who helps you figure out exactly what you should be doing, right? Whether that's what you're eating, how you're sleeping, how you're moving, because even movement is a funny one and that can lead to burnout. And I think in my story, I was saying I was doing, waking up to go for a 5K run in the morning at 5 a.m. and then going to a spin class thinking that I'm being healthy because I'm moving at the start and the end of my day. But for my body that was already so depleted, and most people nowadays are so depleted, they shouldn't be doing high intensity activities like that for long periods of time, right? More restorative activities, yin yoga, restorative Pilates, breath work. Those are the types of things that, going for walks as opposed to hardcore 5K runs and spin classes. They're not going to be good for someone who's struggling. So exercise is another huge part. And we could spend a whole episode talking about all the mishaps that I see from people who are thinking they're doing themselves a favor by going for a run or doing a marathon or a 10K or whatever, and then realizing like, I've screwed up my knees, I'm injured, I've hurt this, I've hurt that. I'm like, well, there's a reason why, because one, if you're sitting all day and then you decide to go and run for an hour, that's no good for you either, because your hip flexors are screwed from being in one position all day. And then if you decide you're going to go and do high intensity interval training on a bike for 45 minutes, or in my case, it was like, I'm going to go from 5 o'clock to 7 o'clock after work for a spin. And then wonder why can't I sleep? Why am I not breaking down food? Exercise is also a huge piece, personalizing that and working with someone who understands like the circadian rhythms and the cycles of a body, and then your individual body and what it might need, because eventually you might be able to get back up to that, to spinning or whatever. But ideally you don't want to do it at 5 in the afternoon, because that's when your cortisol is tapering off. So you want to be doing it at a time like either in the morning when your cortisol is peaking. So I think all that to say, it might be complicated, but it's pretty simple when you think about it. It's just like, listen to what's going on with you. If you realize that it's out of whack, go find somebody who's going to look at your individual data and do the types of labs that I've been mentioning, looking at your cortisol levels and your sex hormones, your progesterone, your estrogen, your testosterone, your DHEA, looking at the pathways as well, and who will decipher all of that for you and distill it down into a format that's easy for you to digest and create that roadmap with you to help you get to where you want to go, which is ultimately you want to live longer, you want to live better, and you want to look and feel great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I love that. And yeah, I think what you said is so true. I have a few friends, actually just spent a week with one of them last week. I was in California, and she is so type A, and like that's how she identifies. And she was talking to me about being type A and stuff. And I can also be very type A, so I get it. But I also understand like the type A mindset and the type A way of living just runs down your body. And I've been there, and I just saw it in her, and we're talking, right? And there's no judgment or anything like that, but she's like talking exactly like you said, like gets up, goes for a run in the morning, works, has coffee, has more coffee. And she's talking to me about getting pregnant and how the hardest thing is going to be because you're not supposed to have a lot of coffee when you're pregnant. And like, those are the conversations we're having. Right. And I'm like, okay, girl, like, you call me when you get to that point. I'm going to help you because life is going to force you to slow down. And so I love that in your work, you actually emphasize slowing down. And I would love for you to talk more about that and some like practical strategies of like, what does that actually look like? Like in a week for a woman, let's say she's in her fertile years and she has a career, like what does that look like? Or maybe she's a mom, I don't know, but I'm just saying, like, what does that look like in terms of, hey, I have balance in my life and I'm slowing down, but I'm still successful at my job, successful as a mom, as a partner? Like, what do you recommend for that?
Well, I think one of the first things I want people to understand is that you're never going to be perfect all of the time. So the perfectionism that you're going to have it right every single day, just throw that out of the window, right? We're working with 80-20. If you can get it right 80% of the time, you're doing better than most people. And that's actually going to be better for you than being in that type A kind of mindset of like, I've got to have everything. I've got to have it all, right? I've got to have the kick-ass job. I've got to have the kick-ass relationship, the kick-ass house, the kick-ass kids. Everybody's like, just throw all that out of the window. Throw out the perfectionism. Throw out the comparing and despairing attitudes as well, because that's another big driver for type A types, because they're like, oh, wait, everybody else is getting ahead. They're getting ahead faster than me. I need to be leading the pack. And they're in that space of putting themselves last because they want to be first ahead of everybody else, right? And when I say putting themselves last, putting their health last. And you talked about life is going to force your friend to slow down. I hate that that's going to happen, because that's unfortunately exactly what does happen. Like, if you do not make time for wellness, you will be forced to make time for illness. So from her perspective, and for all the type A's who are listening out there, like, take this as a cautionary tale. Sometimes your biggest wake up call could be a heart attack. Like, you might have no symptoms and then there's a heart attack that hits you. You know what I mean? So being mindful of like time to breathe, waking up and getting the sunlight, moving out of cities. I think, like, I know everybody can't do that immediately, but have some kind of exit plan. Have some kind of plan where you're like, you know what, I'm not going to live in a concrete jungle for the rest of my life. This is not good for my health. There's so many studies that have proven that if you look at glass and steel, it actually revs up your nervous system and escalates cortisol levels. And that if you look at scenes with, water and mountains and trees and greenery or the ocean, it actually gets your heart rate to lower. It reduces cortisol. So spending more time outside, very simple, free. You don't need a functional medicine test for this. Just go outside. So looking at what does balance look like? How much time have I spent in the sun today? How much time have I spent connecting with friends today? How much time have I spent laughing today? Right? How much time have I, again, back to the things that light me up. How much time have I spent doing things that light me up? So doing that audit, maybe at the end of each day, practicing some gratitude, very, very transformational in my experience. Even people dealing with severe mood disorders like depression or anxiety, gratitude is a state shifter. It doesn't happen immediately. But like anything, like you don't go to the gym and suddenly lift weights and then you got muscles. You got to work at it. So you will work at your gratitude practice. You will work at your breath work. You will work at slowing down. The breath is one of the easiest ways as well to start bringing the body back into balance. So breath work, gratitude, carving out time. And in fact, for people who are listening, I actually do a talk on this, but I'm going to condense what, you're going to get the gist of it. I get everybody to pull out their phones. And I'm like, okay, look at your calendar and look at where you can build in 15-minute blocks or 10-minute blocks. And I have a download, and I can gift this to your users if you like. It's a 10-minute reset, and it's how to create a positive mind within 10 minutes, right? So you can listen to that, and you can block out your 10 minutes, whether that's in the morning. I personally find in the morning tricky, because when I wake up, I have so many things on my to-do list that I want to just jump into and get done. So I kind of wait until about like 10 or 11 o'clock. Now I do work for myself, so I know this might not be everybody else's experience. But like if I wake up at 6, I'm getting up, getting all my stuff done, making my smoothies, sitting at my desk. And then once I feel like I've gotten enough off my plate, then I will go and have my 10, 15 minutes of breathing, practicing gratitude, closing my eyes, and basically getting into a more positive state as well. So 10 minutes a day, pop that into your calendar, open it up on your phone, block it out throughout the day. If you notice that you've got like a lot of meetings that are back to back to back, look at where you can be like, hey, I'm going to need 15 minutes between these things, or even like a good half an hour to maybe have a human minute, like eat, breathe, get away from your desk, not stare at a screen. So, balance looks like the lesser screen time, more time outside, more time connecting with people that you love, more time breathing slowly as opposed to hyperventilating while you're at your desk or you're scrolling on your phone, less screen time. So I think that's like 5 things right there that people could do very easily that are leading you in the right direction toward being more balanced.
The hardest thing for me is to shut off my mind at night when I want to sleep. And it is funny because I wake up tired, already thinking of when I'll go back to bed. And on the exact moment I lay my head on the pillow, it feels like a machine of crazy what if thoughts is turned on. Does this ever happen to you? Let me tell you my secret to deal with this. You have already heard of magnesium breakthrough by Bioptimizers, which I talk about all the time, and how it's great for sleep and promoting calmness and relaxation. What I found out is that the brains behind Magnesium Breakthrough have taken it to the next level with a product specifically designed for sleep, and it is called Sleep Breakthrough, and it has been a total game changer for me. Sleep Breakthrough is a delicious pre-bed drink that combines the power of magnesium with other natural ingredients like valerian root to help us fall asleep faster, stay asleep longer, and wake up feeling refreshed. Since I started taking Sleep Breakthrough, I've been waking up feeling well-rested, energized, and ready to tackle the day ahead. I highly recommend giving it a try. Trust me, it really works. This is exactly what I take, especially on the nights when I wake up in the middle of the night and I can't fall back to sleep. I will take 1 scoop of this in my water, and then I'm asleep within a half hour. You can visit sleepbreakthrough.com/biohackingbrittany and order now. And in addition to this, you can use my promo code biohackingbrittany and you will get extra gifts at purchase that are secret, and you have to go to the page to find out what those are. So sleepbreakthrough.com/biohackingbrittany to get your sleep breakthrough and enjoy. Yeah, I love that. I have talked about that and thought about a lot of those things very frequently.
What's stopping you from putting it into practice? Let's coach.
I do put quite a bit of it into practice. One thing that my husband and I are talking about right now is moving and like what that's going to look like. And that's a big thing for us right now. We both work from home and we both work online, and we can both work from anywhere. So it's kind of, and we live in an expensive city in Vancouver in Canada, and we're kind of at this point of like, we love it here, we do, but at the same time, I'm like, oh, I really want to be in nature more, and I want to have better work-life balance and be kind of out of this whole hustle and bustle that tends to happen, especially in big cities in North America. So we have this conversation a lot. We've looked at a lot of places. We haven't decided yet, but I don't know if it'll be in Canada. We've also looked at like Costa Rica and going to Central America. Anyway, I'm going on a tangent, but
this is what a lot of people do need to think about. Like, where do you want to enjoy your life? And if it's in a city where it's expensive, taxes are expensive, whatever it is, like everything's just like a squeeze on you.
Yeah.
Like, where could you live that's better, right? That's nicer, that's cleaner, better air, better community, where people actually care about you. Cities, unfortunately, I don't think they burn out the best in humans. And I lived in an apartment building for about 10 years, and I did not know my neighbors. And I didn't want to get to know them, and they didn't want to get to know me. We saw each other in the elevator on the way down. Everyone would avoid eye contact, And it was the same thing, like you're getting on a train to go into work. You're avoiding eye contact with everyone. You're putting in your headphones because you don't want to hear anybody else's conversations. You don't want anyone to talk to you. It's like your do not disturb is on. So cities don't bring out the best in humans. You don't want to connect with the people around you because you're on top of each other. And, Vancouver looks like a pretty place. Like, it looks like it would be a nice place. But if the culture is that everything's just hustle and bustle, then why would you want to do that?
Yeah, exactly. Right? And especially
there. Yeah.
Yeah. Especially as we like talk about having kids as well. I'm just like, I don't know if this is the healthiest place for them to grow up. Like, it is a pretty healthy place, like in terms of like compared to Toronto and other places. But again, it's like, okay, we're probably better off more in the countryside somewhere. Like, we live right by the ocean here, but like you said, less pollution, less traffic, less noise at night, less bright lights on the street shining into our apartment, all these things. And so we're thinking about it, and it's on our radar. And I think that's the right place for where it should be right now as we kind of navigate it. But I think a lot of people think that's like actually one of the good things that came out of the pandemic was a lot of people moved away from cities and were like, oh, I actually don't want to be in this area.
Yeah, completely. I think you talked about Costa Rica, but I don't know if you knew I was living in Mexico during the pandemic. I got to Mexico, and this is something that I want to share with people. For anyone who feels stuck or feels like, oh my God, I'm never going to be able to have the energy to do any of these things, to pack up a life and start all over. If you feel overwhelmed just at the thought of that, it's like, that's a clue as well that you need to pay attention. And for me, I was able to take on all of that because I had worked on reclaiming my health and getting it back, right? The unfortunate thing was that, to enter the United States, I ended up having to I got set back by, the vaccinations did not make me feel good. I did not do well with them. However, because I know everything that I know, I've been able to recover from most of the side effects of that. And yes, it is a work in progress, but I definitely have my energy back. Like, I've done my repeat labs. A lot of my markers are in a much better place than they were back in October 2022 when it was all very recent. So I know that I'm healing, that my body's getting stronger, and that it's not going to take me the years or decades that it might be taking some people to recover from some of these things, right? Because of the knowledge of the things that I know now, and because of the labs that I like to run, and because of the way that I've now set up my life that I can live. I've set up my life where I can wake up in the morning and go outside for an hour and spend sitting in the sun having tea or coffee or whatever, and being able to enjoy that and having connection with my husband before I get to my desk. And I'm not rushing off to the next thing. And the reason I've been able to do, and in fact, I even met my husband because of functional medicine. If I hadn't reclaimed my health in 2017, I would never have been traveling in 2019, because that was it. I started traveling all the time. I was able to travel because I'm like, I have a laptop business now. I can live and work from anywhere, and I can go to conferences from anywhere. And because of that, I met him in Texas. I was living in England. I met him in Texas, and here I am years later, and I was able to live in Mexico during the pandemic so I could be close to him, because I wasn't allowed to enter the United States, but I was able to stay in Mexico, which was only a 2-hour flight for him to come and see me so that we could keep our relationship going. So having your health back opens up so many doors to you, getting a handle on it and being able to, my life back in England, I was just thinking of how small and contracted it was compared to how expansive it is right now.
Aw, I love that. I'm glad. I'm very happy for you. That's awesome. And I'm glad you put in the work to get the life that you want. And even though it was difficult, and even though you had to go through such hard times to be able to get to that point. My last question for you is, I noticed that you did, I don't know if you did official training. I think you did in hypnobirthing. Is that true?
Yeah, that is true. I did a hypnobirthing course in 2010.
Okay. Have you, participated in any hypnobirths or trained people, or can you just briefly touch on this? And the only reason I ask is that I'm in my preconception era. So I'm starting to look into these different birthing techniques. So when I saw that, I was like, okay, I just have to get her 2 cents on this. So I'm just curious what your thoughts are.
Yeah, no, I loved my hypnobirthing training. I had maybe at the start, just to backtrack, 2010, I was married to someone else in England, and we split up. And that's when I went on this whole Eat, Pray, Love year. I went to Israel twice. I went to, where did I go? There were a bunch of places that I went. I went to Scotland to do my hypnobirthing training. There were a couple other places that I went traveling to because I wanted to just see the world, and my ex-husband did not want to do anything. So the minute I was free, I was like, I'm on a plane and I'm going to places that I want to and do things that I want to do. And hypnobirthing was a big part of that, because I believed that a woman, I understood that there's something called a fear, tension, pain cycle. If you believe that you have something to be afraid of, then your body starts priming yourself for fear. It starts elevating your heart rate, and then and your blood pressure, and all these other factors start to, you're primed for it. So you learn to expect it. So I loved the fact that you could tap into, you can train your mind to not expect fear and to therefore not experience pain. And I went in initially very naively thinking it was all going to be about pain management. But what I got from it that was so incredible, they showed us people having natural birth. So we got to watch a lot of videos and things, and people giving birth with dolphins in the Black Sea. I didn't even know there were dolphins in the Black Sea, but these women in Russia giving birth with these dolphins. And it was just so incredible to witness them in a state of bliss going through this, as opposed to what we see on television, what we hear from friends and people who are like, oh, worst pain of your life, blah, blah, blah. And you're like, crap, like that's what I'm setting myself up for. But there are people who have, I'm going to say this, orgasmic births, full births. And I know everyone's going to be like, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? And I helped a couple of women back then, but because I was in this place in my life where I had left my ex-husband and I didn't really have I was in that place where I'm like, I have to work. I have to have a day job. I'd done the training, but I needed the day job. So it never really took off as a practice. I had like 1 or 2, maybe 3 clients in total who were trained. But the thing is with a hypnobirth is that someone doesn't come into the room with you, right? Like you do like a course from like week 20. Once you get to 20 weeks, you do 5 weeks of training as so I teach people within that 20 to 25 weeks, and then they go off and they practice. And usually the partners are involved. Like you've got to have whoever's going to be in the birthing room with you, they're going to be part of it as well. So it is beautiful. I never really went anywhere with it, but I do love that now I help women get into the best shape of their lives so that when they are ready to have a baby, they can do that. And maybe it's something that I'll pick up again in the future. I actually know 1 or 2 people who have had orgasmic births, which was very interesting to hear. They were like, yeah, my first one was a normal birth where, I had drugs and an epidural and blah, blah, blah. And then the second one, I did hypnobirthing and it was bliss and it was like 3 hours and it was so easy and beautiful. And he was crying, but like in a good way, it's quite miraculous to witness. So like I said, I went in looking for like pain management with like my science head on and came out with my heart blown wide open from the whole thing. Like it was so beautiful. And I thought, my God, women are amazing. Like, are amazing.
Yeah.
Newfound appreciation for the female body and for my mother. She and I did not have the greatest relationship when I was growing up. And when I saw, like, I'm like, my God, these are the things that she went through, that her body was going through. Like, wow. And she did it 5 times. God bless her.
Wow.
Yeah. 5 times. So I think when you do the training, and even if you work with somebody who's going to guide you on that, they're going to teach you so much about how powerful your body is and how it responds to suggestion. And, I did say like, oh, you can't kumbaya your way out of like a gut bacteria, but you can totally kumbaya your way into a healthy, happy, safe, natural birth.
I love that. That's such a good way to put it.
I've seen it happen. I've been so blown away by it. I was like, wow, that's amazing.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. That's very insightful for us. And I'm going to, definitely explore those topics a bit more as well myself. If people want to work with you and this really resonated with them, where can they go and how can they connect with you?
Yeah, so I encourage everybody to just get a call with me. It's on my website. There's a little button at the top of the website that says book a call. So you just go to gutsyexecutivecoach.com. And there will be this little button called book a call, and it will take you through a couple of steps on how to, I like to do a little assessment with everybody first before we actually meet. So there'll be a video on the page that it's like 3 minutes. It's not a long video, just telling you where to go to do the assessment when you make the appointment. And it's really, the assessment doesn't take a long time. Again, something like under 5 minutes. So it's just for me to kind of get a sense of where you're at, what symptoms you're experiencing, so that I know where to kind of channel my energy and efforts and the kind of suggestions that I can make for you when we meet. So gutsyexecutivecoach.com, and you can find me on Instagram as Gutsy Executive Coach, and I'm on LinkedIn under my real name, Raywin Guerrero. So you can find me in those 3 places.
Amazing. I will put all of those links in the show notes and on my website so everybody can find you super easily. And thank you so much for coming on my podcast. This was awesome. And I just learned so much from you, and I'm so encouraged by the work that you do. So thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for doing everything you do. I appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Biohacking with Brittany. If you're